Hello film friends and welcome back. This is Stacia and this is the second episode in my series My Favorite Oscar Years. This episode we are going to focus on the Oscar year 1935 that celebrated the films that came out in 1934. It took place in February of 1935 at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, and it was the 7th Academy Awards. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy.
Of course, my love for the Oscars of 1935 doesn't come from watching them on TV. I'm not that old. And being 1935, it was not shown on TV, and it was not even broadcast on the radio. There was only 16 competitive awards given that night, which include 3 new categories for Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, and Best Original Song. That night's ceremony was a banquet dinner affair, and it was hosted by writer Irvin S. Cobb. Could you imagine being in the room during these early Oscars? It would have been amazing. They were smaller affairs and they were stacked with stars. The awards were very popular at the time, but they were only covered in the print media. There are pictures from the ceremony, but only a few, and mainly just of the winners posing with their Oscars. The best picture at that point was known as Outstanding Production, and it had 12 nominees in that category that night. The nominees included The Barretts of Wimpole Street, Cleopatra, Flirtation Walk, The Gate of Orsay, Here Comes the Navy, The House of Rothschild, Imitation of Life, It Happened One Night of Love, The Thin Man, Viva Villa, and The White Parade. The winner for Best Picture or Best Outstanding Production was It Happened One Night. There were only 3 nominees for Best Director, which were Frank Capra for It Happened One Night, Victor Schertzinger for One Night of Love, and W.S. Van Fyck for The Thin Man. And of course, Frank Capra went on to win that award. The Best Actor nominations were only 3, with Clark Gable for It Happened One Night, Frank Morgan for The Affairs of Selene, and William Powell for The Thin Man. Clark Gable won this award, and it's quite famous for his Oscar for It Happened One Night. Happened to come up for auction in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was actually bought at auction by Steven Spielberg, who returned it to the Academy because he thought that the awards all should belong to the Academy. And now, after 1950, you are no longer allowed to sell your Academy Award. It has to be returned to the Academy for the cost of, I believe, $1. You sell it back to them. But every once in a while, pre-1950s Oscars come up for auction, and it is completely allowable to do this. The Best Actress nominees, they actually had 4 nominees that night in this category. It was Claudette Colbert for It Happened One Night, Bette Davis for Of Human Bondage, which is notable because she is actually a write-in nominee. This is one of only 2 Academy Award ceremonies where they allowed write-in nominees. There was such an outcry because Bette Davis was not nominated that year that she was ended up being a nominee by write-in category. The other 2 nominees were Grace Moore for One Night of Love and Norma Shearer for The Barretts of Wimpole Street. Claudette Colbert won that night in a sweep for It Happened One Night. It also won the award for screenplay, the Best Adapted Screenplay, and it is one of only 3 films that swept all 5 major award categories of Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. There are only 2 other movies that have gone on to do this. That is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and The Silence of the Lambs. And back then, there were no categories for supporting actor or actress. And you'll notice if you look at the Academy's website, the awards for acting are just Best Actress and Best Actor, not Best Lead Actress or Lead Actor. There was also an award called the Juvenile Academy Award that was presented that night. It was not a competitive Oscar. It was just bestowed on a juvenile actor. And the first winner was Shirley Temple, who was by far the biggest child star of her day. They presented the Juvenile Academy Award from 1935 until 1961, and it was discontinued. My love for the 1935 Oscars simply has to do with two films. It Happened One Night and The Thin Man, and they are two wonderful movies that I suggest everybody watch. It Happened One Night is the blueprint for every good romantic comedy that followed. It is sharp, witty, and not too overly sentimental or cheesy. It's endlessly watchable, it holds up as a classic, and should be watched by everyone. And it was the first romantic comedy ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. With The Thin Man, you have a sharp thriller and a whodunit with a dash of humor. Based on a Dashiell Hammett novel with the same name, William Powell and Myrna Loy star as Nick and Nora Charles. They went on to star in several Thin Man movies, and it is a very entertaining series, and I suggest you check out all of the movies in that series. So that's it. It simply came down to two of my favorite films of all time going up against each other, and It Happened One Night made Oscar history with all of its wins. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for joining me, and I hope you tune in next time. Have a good night.